Welcome, sleepless spirit. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to guide you gently into the shadows of slumber, where dreams take over and worries fade away. Before we begin, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more bedtime tales, whispered just for you. Let me know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it as you listen tonight? And if there's a story you've been longing to hear, something spooky, something comforting, tell me. I'm always listening. Now, tuck yourself in. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm blanket. It's time to let go and drift into the story. I no longer travel that section of the roadway if I can avoid it. No, they weren't there, yet they tell me I'm overreacting and that nothing really happened. They didn't hear what he said or saw how he looked at me. They didn't have that gut-wrenching feeling that goes throughout your entire body when you know something is seriously wrong. My gas light came on at about 11 o'clock at night. I foolishly believed myself that I could drive home without stopping again after visiting my sister 3 states away. There was nobody on the highway, only on weeknights in remote places, where you can drive for 20 minutes without seeing another automobile. Do you get that unique sense of emptiness? In fact, I was relieved when I eventually saw the glimmer of a petrol station up ahead. It was an old station, one of those privately owned ones, that, in spite of being encircled by nothing but darkness and countryside, nonetheless persists. Over the pumps, a solitary fluorescent light flickered. Additionally, the convenience shop that was connected to it had a yellow-tinted illumination that gave the interior a curiously ill appearance. No additional vehicles were present. That struck me as strange for a petrol station so close to the highway, but I was exhausted and eager to get home. I got out after pulling up to pump 3. The temperature had dropped significantly since I had stopped for dinner 2 hours prior. I swiped my card and began pumping, letting my air out in noticeable puffs. It was then that I saw him. He stood just beyond the pool of light, beneath the overhang close to the store door. When I pulled in, I hadn't noticed him. He was standing motionless, observing me, with his hands in his pockets and dressed in trousers and a dark jacket. I made an effort to ignore it. I reminded myself that people constantly smoke outside of gas stations. He wasn't smoking, but perhaps he was simply taking a rest and breathing. He had nothing to do, merely facing my direction while standing in the darkness. The pump took a very long time. Hyper aware of the man's presence, I continued to watch the figures as they increased. I virtually grabbed the nozzle out and pushed it back into the holder when it finally clicked off at $32. I was about to leave in my car again. Don't bother going inside for coffee or a toilet break. All I wanted to do was leave. However, he cried out to me as I grabbed for my door handle. "Sarah." I went cold. He had called my name. My name had just been called by this stranger at this remote petrol station in the middle of nowhere. With my hand still on the door handle, I slowly turned to face him. Now he had moved ahead into the light. His black eyes mirrored the neon glow, and his slender face suggested he was in his 40s. His face wasn't frightening, but he wasn't grinning either. It was waiting, neutral. "I apologize," I was able to say, my voice appearing smaller than I had planned. "I take it you're Sarah." His head cocked slightly. "And my full name is Sarah Mitchell." Even though my heart was racing now, I made an effort to maintain my composure. "Are you someone I know?" "Not quite yet." He stepped forward one more. It seemed casual, not hostile, as if we were old friends bumping into one another. "You saw your profile, though. I know that. In person, you're even more attractive." My social media accounts and profile. My stomach dropped. I have my Facebook on private. I had no doubt about it. However, I had complained about the lengthy travel in a story had shared on Instagram earlier that day while at a rest break. Had I marked where I was? I was unable to recall. In an attempt to appear firm, I answered, "I think you have me confused with someone else." I opened the door of my automobile. "I had to leave. Hold on." He extended a hand. "Are you not curious as to how I know where you'll be?" I didn't respond. My hands were shaking as I attempted to insert the key into the ignition of my car. He was still standing there, watching me through the window, his look still neutral. It wasn't that hard, he added, raising his voice just enough for me to hear him over the glass. You wrote about going to Columbus to see your sister. Posted about departing at approximately 700 p.m. Uploaded a photo of your dashboard that shows the highway sign behind it. From there, simple math. I-7 for 3 hours. Gas would be necessary at this point. For 30 miles in each direction. This is the only station. I started the vehicle. I could hardly hold onto the steering wheel because my hands were shaking so much. He was now moving steadily, without hurry, in the direction of my automobile. I put the vehicle in reverse. There is no necessity for negligence, Sarah, he yelled, and his voice had emotion in it for the first time. Irritation. I've been waiting here for 2 hours. Talking to me for a few minutes is the very least you could do. I traveled this far. I didn't turn around. Without even looking for other vehicles, I squealed my tires as I sped out of the gas station and merged onto the highway. I was trembling all around, expecting to see headlights following me. I kept checking my rearview mirror, but the road it remained dark behind me. Before I felt secure enough to even comprehend what had transpired, I drove for an hour. He had followed me and deduced my whereabouts and timing by looking at my social media posts. He had been waiting for me. I'm not sure what would have occurred if I had been 5 minutes later, if I had pulled up to a different pump further away from the store door, where he couldn't see me as readily, or if I had stopped for lunch or a restroom break. I checked all of my social media accounts as soon as I came home. I had a public Instagram account. Since I just uploaded images of food and my cat, I had never bothered to modify it. I reviewed my most recent tales and blogs. There was a photo of the rest stop. You can see the timestamp, the sign on the highway, a photo taken in my sister's backyard with our house number displayed in the backdrop. 3 days ago, I mentioned in another post how thrilled I was to be going to Columbus this weekend. I had essentially shared my whole itinerary with a complete stranger. I made every account private and erased everything, but the harm was already done. He had witnessed everything. He was aware of my name, appearance, and past whereabouts. Now, he was aware of my automobile, my license plate, and most likely even more. 2 days later, the worst part arrived. Still jittery and hardly asleep, I was browsing through my phone when I received an Instagram follow request. The username was a random string of numbers, and the profile only featured a blank avatar and no image. No followers, no posts. I nearly rejected it right away, but for some reason I clicked on the profile. There was only one post. An hour ago, it was uploaded. The image was grainy and black, obviously taken at night, but I was able to identify it. A service station. The same service station, and only 3 words in the caption. Till the next occasion. I blocked the account right away after reporting it, but it made no difference. He continued to observe from outside. And this is the thing I can't stop thinking about. The thing that keeps me up at night. What was the number of times he had attempted this? He had monitored how many other women had he waited for in the midst of nowhere? Had they all managed to escape as I had? Or had I simply been fortunate? I still occasionally have to travel through that region for job or family-related reasons. I make it a point to fill up my petrol tank before approaching that section of the highway. I have 3 different pals on my phone, and I leave it on with location sharing turned on. That petrol station is where I never stop. Sometimes I go by it in the daylight, and it appears so innocuous and typical. A deserted highway with an abandoned petrol station. However, I am aware of what might be waiting for you in the shadows. I am aware that someone may be reading your posts, calculating your precise location and time of arrival, and doing the math. Furthermore, I am aware that he said, until the next time, not if, until, late at night. I'm sometimes worrying if he's still waiting, if he's moved on to someone else, or if he's still checking my profile page in anticipation of my next mistake. He's waiting for me to write something that will let him know where I will be. I have now made my accounts private. My posts are ambiguous. I never openly discuss my plans or tag locations. However, since that night, I have made one error. only one. I celebrated finally having a place of my own last week by posting a photo of my new apartment complex. I used caution. The address is something I left out. Just included a picture of the brick exterior with a text about fresh starts, without mentioning the area or displaying any street signs or identifying markings. Friends and relatives liked the post as usual, but late that night, after I had already gone to bed, one person liked it more than others. I noticed it when I checked my phone after waking up. A profile with a username consisting of a random string of numbers and a blank avatar. I knew, even though the figures were different. I selected the profile. Nothing, no followers, no posts. However, there were 5 sentences in the bio that chilled me to the bone. You look good in brick. I made my profile even more secret, changed all of my passwords, and reported the account. But isn't it too late? Once he found me, he can locate me once more. The worst aspect is that I will never be able to tell when he's near. I have no idea whether he's sitting in a coffee shop across from me, observing, or waiting in the parking lot of my building, or whether he's driving 3 vehicles behind me on the interstate. All because I didn't think anyone would notice the picture I posted while at a rest stop. The night shift for 8 months. I worked the graveyard shift at a gas station. 8 months of cleaning spills, restocking shelves, and keeping an eye on the clock as the morning draws near. I would always shrug it off when people asked if I ever felt afraid working alone at night. I would assure them that nothing ever happens. More than anything else, it's boring. However, that was before to the arrival of the man with the rental automobile. I saw him for the first time at around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, after the bar patrons have left but before the early morning commuters begin to arrive. That is the deadliest time of day. The door chime sounded as I was replenishing the energy drink cooler. He was standing just inside the entryway when I looked up, as if he was apprehensive about going all the way inside. He was of ordinary height, perhaps in his 50s, and dressed in khakis and a polo shirt that didn't look appropriate for 2 a.m. He had a polished, almost business-like appearance, as if he should be at a business conference rather than a gas station in the middle of the night. With a courteous nod, he made his way directly to the coffee stand. I didn't give it much thought and resumed stalking. He wasn't pouring coffee, though, as I discovered later. He was facing the coffee maker and simply stood there, holding an empty cup, but he was not moving at all. It appeared like he finally snapped out of it and began filling his cup after I watched him for perhaps 30 seconds. Without a word, he paid precise change and walked away. Strange, but not so strange. When you work at night, you witness a variety of odd behaviors. Individuals who take medicine, work irregular hours, and don't get enough sleep, or are just inherently awkward. By the conclusion of my shift, I had forgotten about him. 2 nights later, at precisely the same time, he returned. I reviewed the security footage later, and the timestamp indicated that it was 2:07 a.m. The same pattern. Paused at the door for a few seconds, made his way to the coffee station, stood motionless for a long while, poured his coffee, and walked away. This time, I saw his silver sedan with a generic barcode from a rental business still visible in the rearview mirror. When he entered for the 3rd time, I chose to be amiable. I said, "You must really like our coffee," as he walked over to the counter. His countenance was utterly blank as he gazed at me. Nothing, neither friendly nor hostile, as if he needed to think about what I had said before he could answer. "It's convenient," he answered at last. He spoke in a flat, rather robotic voice. "You in town for work?" In an attempt to start a conversation, I inquired. The evenings were lengthy, and I often valued any conversation, even if it was only small talk. Once more, he gave me precise change, the same $347 as before. Then he walked away without saying anything else. He returned each and every night after that, always from 2 to 15 in the morning. The same routine every time. Position yourself at the door to get coffee, walk, remain still, pour some coffee, make sure to pay with precise change, get out. Gas was never purchased. I never made any other purchases, only coffee, the same quantity each time. By the second week, I began to feel uncomfortable about it. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong with it, but there was something strange about it all. It might have been the fact that he never appeared to blink, or that his movements were practically scripted. Or perhaps it was the obvious truth that he was lodging close by. Unless you live nearby, you don't travel to the same gas station every night at the same time only for coffee. However, we were surrounded by farmland, a few strewn about houses, and a motel that was closed a mile up the road. After he departed one evening, I made the decision to observe him via the window. Although he did not drive, he climbed into his rented car. Away, he sat motionless in the driver's seat of the car in the parking lot. During the 10 minutes I watched, he sat there looking directly at the gas pumps without moving, checking his phone, adjusting the mirror, or doing anything else. At last, he turned on the ignition and drove off. He did not, however, re-enter the freeway. He drove onto the side street that went past the dilapidated motel and the strewn-about houses. After that, I began to pay closer attention. His light blue polo shirt was consistently the same color, I noted. He always wore khakis as the identical shade. I was unable to determine whether he owned several identical outfits or if he dressed the same way every night. Even though it had rained multiple times that week, and there were a lot of puddles in the parking lot, his shoes were always immaculate. His hands were the thing that truly irritated me. They were almost abnormally clean all the time. The nails were neatly clipped. The skin appeared cleansed. It may seem strange to notice, but working in retail exposes you to a lot of hands. You observe hands with calluses, filth, paint, or ink stains, as well as hands with grease under the nails. He appeared to have recently used a surgical brush to clean his hands. When our shifts overlapped, I brought him up to my manager. She remarked, "Oh, the coffee guy. Yes, he's peculiar, but he isn't causing any problems. Leave him alone." But I was unable to ignore it. I felt uneasy about him for some reason. It was the custom. Every night, down to the minute, I get the same thought, the same uncanny stillness, the same blank face. Individuals aren't that reliable. Individuals differ, even in small ways. They come a couple of minutes early or late. The amount of coffee they pour varies, but not him. They either say various things or say nothing at all. He resembled a software that repeatedly ran the same loop. I chose to disrupt his schedule on a Thursday night or, technically, Friday morning. I yelled, "Hey, just so you know, I'm about to start a fresh pot," as he entered and made his way to the coffee station. "It has been sitting for a long time. You will receive better coffee if you can wait for about 2 minutes." He froze in mid-step and halted. He remained motionless for a considerable amount of time with his back to me. Then he turned, very slowly, very slowly. I felt sick to my stomach at the expression on his face. It wasn't precisely rage. There was something else, a problem. His eyes were excessively big. He had his jaw clenched, and I took an uncontrollable step back because of the intensity that was emanating from him. Silently, "I'll take this pot," he said. His tone had shifted. It was no longer flat. Now there was something beneath it, something jagged and hardly under control. Despite my racing heart, I hurriedly answered, "Okay, sure, no problem," trying to appear informal. Silently, he poured his coffee. Silently, he poured his coffee. The place was so tense that I was having trouble breathing. With trembling hands, he counted out his exact change when it came time to pay. More forcefully than usual, the coins clinked against the counter. He refused to give me a look. I locked the door after him. I wasn't meant to. I was indifferent to the fact that we were a 24-hour channel. He was sitting in his car again when I looked in through the glass, but this time he had his hands on the steering wheel. His mouth moved as if he was speaking to himself, and I could see it. Before he eventually drove off, he sat there for over 20 minutes. Perhaps that would be the end of it, I thought. Perhaps he would have found another gas station for his midnight coffee if I had frightened him as much as he had frightened me. However, he returned the following evening. Identical time, identical routine, as if nothing had occurred. He was there longer than usual, except this time when he stood at the coffee station. I kept track of it. He stood there staring at the coffee machine with an empty cup for 4 minutes and 38 seconds. He talked before I had a chance to say anything when he approached the counter. "Are you a local?" I was urged to lie by every impulse in my body. No, I mentioned that I commute from the city. That was untrue. He always departed on the same side road, and I lived 10 minutes away in a little rental home off of it. He studied my face and nodded gently. "That's a long drive for a night shift," I said. "Good podcast time," attempting to maintain a steady voice. He made his payment and drove off, but I saw that he spent more time that evening sitting in his car. Upon his eventual departure, I observed until his tail lights vanished. I then contacted my boyfriend right away and requested him to stay on the phone with me until 6 o'clock, when my shift finished. He didn't show up at his regular time on Saturday night, after 2 a.m. to 15 and to 30 a.m. Instead of feeling relieved, I became more nervous. Where had he gone? He had interrupted his regimen. But why? Another vehicle arrived at the pumps around 2:45. After pumping her gas, a woman exited. I began to loosen up a little. Perhaps he had moved on. Perhaps he had left the place where he was staying and returned to his origin. Then, around 3:17 a.m., I noticed the silver rental car with headlights turn into the parking lot. As soon as he exited and entered, I realized something was off. He was dressed in the same khakis and light blue shirt, but his hair was a little disorganized. He had both hands in his pockets. The coffee station was not visited by him. He went directly to the counter, where he stood and gazed at me. "You told me lies," he replied quietly. My mouth became parched. "What? The city is not your commute. You left last week, and I saw it. Porter Road was your next turn. The road to the city is not that way." He had trailed me. I was followed home by this dude. I thought I was out of breath. With my hand moving from my phone behind the counter, I managed to say, "I don't know what you're talking about. It's all right," he said. And in some ways, that was worse than if he had been upset. He spoke in a soft, even comforting tone. "I know why you told lies. Strangers are not trusted. That's shrewd. However, I want you to know that I'm no longer a stranger. Every night, we get to see one another. We know each other now. Additionally, I believe it's time for us to get to know one another better." I tried to sound firm as I said, "I need you to leave." He grinned. I wish I had never seen him grin because it was the first time. His eyes were not reached. "I'm going to go. I always go. But tomorrow night and the night after that and the night after that, I'll be back." He leaned a little forward. "You see, I'm pretty consistent. You can count on me to finish what I start." He didn't purchase anything before leaving. I saw him get into his vehicle, and this time he left right away. Switching onto the road I took home was Porter Road. The following day, I informed my manager that I was unable to work nights due to a family situation and resigned. Despite her annoyance, she was unable to stop me. Before locating a new residence on the opposite side of town, I spent 2 weeks living with my partner after packing up what I could from my rental home, working day shifts in a restaurant as part of a new job. The dude was never seen by me again. However, I got a call from my former manager approximately a month after I resigned. "Hey, do you remember that weird coffee guy?" she inquired. "The person who entered each night?" "Yeah," I replied, feeling my gut clench. "After you left, he continued to come in. The same time, same procedure, every night. However, he began inquiring about you. I wanted to know if I had your contact details, where you lived, and where you traveled. I was honest when I told him I didn't know anything. Then he simply stopped showing up. It's been 2 weeks since I saw him. Even though I didn't feel well about it, I said, "That's good, yes," but she hesitated. "The new girl who stole your change, a man who fits his description, has been showing up," she claimed, "but he is no longer purchasing coffee. He simply enters, waits a minute by the door, and then walks out as if he's trying to find someone or something." I hung up after thanking her. It didn't matter. I told myself. I had left. He was unable to locate me. But when I'm laying in bed late at night, I reflect on what he said about consistency and finishing what starts. And I'm curious about what occurs when someone like that is unable to complete the task they began. Do they give up? Do they go on? Or do they simply continue to search night after night in the same pattern, waiting for the time when everything comes together again, and they can finish the pattern they began? I saw a silver vehicle parked across the street last week while I was wrapping up at the restaurant. It could have been any silver sedan, and it was too dark to tell who was inside. They can be found anywhere. For 10 minutes, I watched from the window, but nothing came of it. The automobile eventually drove off. It was most likely nothing, merely a coincidence. However, I've recently begun to change up my schedule. I travel home in different ways. When I can, I work different shifts. Due to the fact that patterns can be traced, I never leave at the same time twice. The problem with religious pattern followers is that they assume others will follow suit. They watch for you to revert to your old habits. They have patience, and I can't get rid of the thought that someone is going through the same motions in their nighttime routine someplace, perhaps in a different location and a different rental car, waiting for their pattern to cross mine once more. I don't believe the coffee was ever the main attraction. The incorrect bathroom when I travel alone. I've always exercised caution. My doors are always locked. I only converse with strangers when absolutely required. When something doesn't feel right, I follow my intuition. However, sometimes caution is insufficient. Danger can occasionally appear in the most unlikely locations and at the most routine times, and you may not even realize how close you are until it's nearly too late. It took place during a road trip from Portland to San Francisco in November of last year. With the intention of making there in a single, lengthy journey, I'd set off early in the morning, but by 8 p.m. I had 3 hours left and was fatigued. I made the decision to stop at the next exit and locate a 20-minute rest area, perhaps get a cup of coffee and go to the restroom. About a quarter of a mile down a dark frontage road, I came to an exit that was hardly signposted, with only one filling station and what appeared to be an abandoned diner. With only 2 pumps and a small adjacent building, the gas station appeared to be older and locally owned. I didn't see anyone, but there was one other vehicle there, a black pickup truck parked close to the air pump. Under the lights, I parked near the entrance and entered. The young, possibly early 20s man behind the counter was worn out and had a spotty beard. Eyes. When I walked in, he hardly raised his head. I asked where the restroom was and picked up a bottle of water. He said, without looking, around back, outside the door. 4729 is the code. I paused. I detest using restrooms outside, especially when it's dark and in a remote location. However, I had to go immediately, and the thought of keeping it for 3 more hours didn't appeal to me. I went back outside after paying for my drink. The restroom was located in a tiny alcove in the rear of the building, out of sight from the road and parking lot, just as he had described. 2 doors stood next to each other, both marked with the faded markings of stick figures. I heard the lock on the women's room door click open, entering the code. The bathroom was surprisingly clean, which made me feel slightly better. 1 toilet and a tiny sink. One of those wall-mounted industrial hand dryers. Although it flickered, the fluorescent light remained on. I made sure the door was secure, closed it behind me, and went about my business. I heard footsteps outside when I was doing my hand washing. Heavy footsteps, such as concrete with labor boots. Just beyond the bathroom door, they came to a halt. I went cold, listening, water still running. Silence for a few seconds. Then I heard a rattle coming from the doorknob. The door was being opened by someone. I cried out, shakier than I wanted my voice to sound, occupied. There was no more rattling. There was further silence, followed by footsteps once more, but they remained. They shifted aside, and I felt sad when I discovered that whoever it was had moved to the door of the men's room next to mine. That door opened and closed, and I heard it. I hurriedly cleaned my hands, since I was eager to go and return to my car. However, I paused with my hand on the doorknob after hearing something. I could hear everything that was going on in the men's room, since the wall between the two restrooms was so thin. I heard footsteps, though it wasn't what you would expect. I heard what sounded like someone moving around. There was no sound of someone going to the restroom. There was only shuffling and movement, as if someone was pacing a tiny area. Then I heard a sound that chilled me to the bone. A voice spoke so faintly that I couldn't make out what it was saying, barely audible through the wall. However, the cadence was incorrect. There was no phone call. It resembled someone speaking to themselves more. Additionally, the tone had an eerie, frantic, and desperate quality, trying to determine what to do. I stood there with my hands still on the doorknob. Go now, and you might bump into whoever it was. Await their departure first. I couldn't quite put my finger on why, but I was beginning to get really scared. There's nothing dangerous about someone using the restroom next to you, yet something felt off. The conversation ceased. I held my breath when I heard the definite sound of the door to the men's room opening. Would they go? Return to their vehicle? The sound of footsteps persisted. Rather, I heard them move directly in front of my door. Then nothing. Nothing but quiet. There was a figure standing right outside the women's restroom, still and silent. 30 seconds went by. Then a minute. I was certain that anyone was outside could hear my heart pounding so loudly. Why did they simply stand there? The logical side of my brain looked for nefarious reasons. They might have been waiting for someone. Maybe they were on their phone. Perhaps they were. Slowly and cautiously, the doorknob began to turn, checking to see if it was locked. Trying to seem more assured than I actually was, I said, "Someone's in here," loudly and firmly. The doorknob ceased to turn. There was a pause, followed by a calm, almost kind man's voice. "I apologize. I mistook this for the men's room," I remarked. "It's clearly marked. You're correct. You're correct. It was my error." A little chuckle. "Hey, I'm locked out of the men's room while you're in there. The code does not function. When you're finished, could you let me use that one quickly? I'm in a terrible situation." I felt uneasy about the request for some reason. He had just emerged from the men's room, which shared a keypad lock with the women's room. Why would he be locked out all of a sudden? Why not just go inside and ask the cashier for assistance? Even if he was, "You can get the code from the clerk inside," I said. "He's not present." I just made sure. It must have been something like stepping out back. One more paused. "Hurry up. I must truly leave." For a moment, just open the door. I didn't answer. I took out my phone and looked for a signal. 2 bars. Better than nothing. I launched my messaging app, prepared to make a phone call if necessary. "Hi there. Once more." The voice spoke. "Are you still inside?" I said nothing. Give him the impression that I had gotten away with it, despite the fact that it was not feasible. A moment later, I heard footsteps once more, but they continued to remain. They paced the little alcove, going back and forth. They weren't going anywhere, whomever it was. They waited. 5 minutes went by. Next, 10. I was confined. There was a person on the other side of the restroom, which had only one door, no windows, and no other means of escape. I thought about phoning the cops. What would I tell them, though? A person outside a public restroom. They would assume I was being suspicious. Then an unknown text message buzzed through my phone. As I read that, I felt sick. "You can't be there indefinitely." My hands began to shake. They had my number. But how? How could they have known to text me at that precise moment? My phone buzzed once again as I stared at it, trying to comprehend what was occurring. Actually, the clerk is not inside. I looked. "I'm alone out here with you." One more buzz. "The silver Honda is your vehicle, correct? License plate with the last digits 3J7. They were familiar with my vehicle. My license plate was known to them. This was no accident. This was prearranged. However, how? Why? No one was following me. As far as I could tell, it had been miles since I had stopped anywhere else. With trembling fingers, I replied to the SMS. "Right now, I'm phoning the police." The answer was prompt. And tell them what? All I am is a man waiting to go to the restroom. He was aware that he was correct. In reality, I hadn't seen him. I had no idea how he looked. I had no idea that he could now get out of here. And I would be trapped in a bathroom, telling the cops that someone had texted me. And they would be waiting outside the door when they got there. I contacted 911 even though I would appear hysterical if he had been gone for a long time. I carefully described the problem to the dispatcher when she replied. Thank God. She took it seriously and informed me that a unit was being shipped to my address. She did, however, also confirm what I already knew. Given how isolated the location was, the closest police car was at least 15 minutes away, if not more. Her words were, "Stay on the line with me. Avoid opening the door. Is the world still quiet?" I paid attention. No noises at all. No footsteps. I muttered, "I think he might have left. Don't presume that. Remain at your current location." However, everything changed when I heard something. The engine of a car starts, not near, but also not far. There was a pretty unique sound coming from my automobile. I had been meaning to have the engine's little rattle corrected. Additionally, that's just what I heard, panic mounting in my voice. I whispered, "He's at my car. I believe he is at my vehicle." That's when I heard it. The distinct sound of my auto alarm going off. He was attempting to enter, or perhaps the alarm was simply going off, and he had already broken in. In any case, I had to decide. Remain confined to the restroom while he did whatever he wanted to my car, possibly taking it or turning it off, so I couldn't get out or take a chance and flee, or turning it off, so I couldn't get out or take a chance and flee. I was no longer thinking clearly, but the dispatcher was saying something about staying put. Ready to bolt, I threw open the door after unlocking it. Alcove was deserted. With my car alarm still blasting in the background, I ran around the building's corner. My car was still there, screeching and flashing its alarm, but no one was around it as I turned the corner and saw the parking lot. The parking lot is completely empty. I had not seen the dark pickup truck before. I sprinted to my car and fumbled with my keys, trying to turn off the alarm, while simultaneously glancing in all directions. I was positive I had locked the driver's side door, but it was a little ajar. The dispatcher's voice continued to play on the speaker of my phone as the alarm went off, asking whether I was all right. "I'm present." Breathlessly, I whispered, "I'm at my car. I don't see anyone. It's 3 minutes to the police. Keep your car locked and stay inside." I climbed inside and shut the doors right away while still nervously scanning my surroundings. How had he arrived at my car in the parking lot without my being able to hear him drive off? Unless the texts had been sent remotely, or unless he had never been in the restroom, well, therefore, unless there were two of them, someone else had been standing outside that door the entire time. It struck me like a blast of cold water. The clerk, who hadn't given me a look and wasn't in the store when the man checked, was in the dark pickup truck. What if they did this on a regular basis? Lock women in the restroom and wait for them to emerge while an accomplice broke into their vehicles. When he first asked, I didn't want to consider the possible consequences of opening that door. It took several minutes for the police to show up. I showed them the texts and provided them my statement. They inspected the store's interior and restrooms. By that time, the clerk was back behind the counter. He claimed to have been present the entire time, claimed not to have seen anyone who fit my account of what happened, claimed that no dark pickup truck had been present tonight. My statement was taken by a courteous but doubtful officer. He added softly, "People sometimes make honest mistakes about these things. The confusion that occurs in the restroom. Furthermore, whoever was texting you may have been from anywhere, not in this exact location." The door of my car was open. I demanded, "Was anything stolen?" I had already looked. No. However, if you're in a hurry, these older car locks may not always catch all the way. He looked at me pityingly. "I can see why you were afraid. You may let your imagination run wild when you're by yourself out here at night. However, after checking everything, we found no evidence of a threat. The texts were untraceable. Some sort of internet phone service provided the number. Most likely a burglar app. The restroom area lacked a security camera. My word is the only proof that anyone else was present. An hour later, still trembling and still checking my rearview mirror every few seconds, I drove away from that petrol station. I was told by the cops that I was safe to leave and that no one was after me. I didn't believe them, though. Even when my gas light came on and I was in dire need of using the restroom once more, I continued driving to San Francisco without stopping. I parked in my friend's driveway, white-knuckled my way to her house, and when she opened the door, I virtually collapsed into her arms. It helped that she believed me. She allowed me to remain as long as I demanded that she keep her door locked and all the curtains drawn, and she complied without hesitation. Eventually, though, I had to take the car home. I eventually had to deal with another road trip, another restroom, and another gas stop. I never returned to that exit. I couldn't recall which exit I'd taken, so I looked it up later and tried to find the name of that petrol station so I could alert people about it. On the map, they all had the same appearance. One gas station every rural exit in the middle of nowhere that might have been the one. I can't quit thinking about this, though. The door of my car was open. I am aware that I locked it. A person would only be aware of those texts, new items, my license plate, and the model of my automobile, is they were closely observing me, had followed me there, or had been waiting for me to come. Additionally, I occasionally receive text messages from unfamiliar numbers late at night. Never anything dangerous, just sporadic harmless texts. Hello, is this number correct? Or did you receive my previous message? Messages that can be spam or incorrect numbers. Sometimes, perhaps once every several months, I receive a message that feels odd, but I always delete it without replying. One that arrives late at night when I'm by myself. It also never says much, just something easy, something that might not have any significance, like, still being cautious, I understand. Or perhaps you now reside in a pleasant neighborhood. Perhaps only the previous week. That night comes to mind. I've occasionally switched my number 3 times. Regardless, these messages follow me. I've attempted to track them down, block them, and reported them. Nothing is effective. They are always untraceable, from different numbers, and ambiguous enough that the authorities claim they are powerless to investigate. And I consider the words of the man outside the restroom, who spoke in such a soothing and amiable tone through the door. You can't be there indefinitely. He is today, just as he was then. I can't hide indefinitely. I can't remain in my apartment locked. Not all gas stations may be avoided. Is unable to quit driving at night. I'll have to stop somewhere eventually. I'll eventually find myself by myself once more in a parking lot, at a rest area, or outside a restroom. And I wonder if he's still out there. Whomever he was, if he's still watching, if he's still waiting, if he messages me to remind me that he's patient, that he knows where I am, and that some doors can never truly be locked once you open them. Once more, they were merely sitting there. This isn't about a hitchhiker, but I don't take them up. This relates to the individuals who were in my car before I even realized they were there, driving back from a wedding in Nevada in late April. After 10 p.m. my engine simply died at midnight. I coasted onto the shoulder with no warning and only stillness. I attempted to contact roadside help, but it took 45 minutes. I started to walk after recalling seeing a petrol station a few miles ago, with 2 pumps and a modest structure. The station was one of those vintage, independent locations. A dark SUV with veiled windows was the only vehicle parked near the pumps. The young shopkeeper allowed me to charge my phone when I entered. A tall, possibly 40-year-old man with a pleasant but unmemorable face entered as I was waiting. After using the restroom, he came up to me. I had no choice but to come over here. Your vehicle broke down. Yes, I said to him. I am a technician. In my truck, I have tools. I could look at it. It may be something easy. I was desperate, but it looked too good to be true. The clerk then gave me a strange look, which I noticed. Something uneasy, but not quite a warning. What do you know? Perhaps I should just wait for the tow company. No issue. I take it that your car is north of here. On the shoulder. I hadn't indicated which way to go. How did you find out? From that direction you walked. Straightforward inference. Though it made sense, something didn't feel quite right. I'll probably simply wait. He continued to smile. Make yourself comfortable. Tow trucks, however, can take hours. The location of your car is not the safest. After paying for his coffee, he got into that dark SUV and drove off. He did not, however, take the roadway. He disappeared into darkness as he followed a service road that ran parallel to the station. I told the clerk. That was strange. Yes, at last, he raised his head. He occasionally enters here, late at night, always engages in conversation with lone individuals in need assist. Why didn't you speak up? What do you say? He offers to assist others. They do take him up on it sometimes. He hesitated. Usually, they don't return here later. I felt sick to my stomach. What are you saying? I never see them again. Perhaps they left after having their automobile fixed. Perhaps he faded away. I phoned roadside help even though my phone was barely charged. They indicated a truck would arrive in around an hour and a half when it rang this time. Instead of waiting by myself on the highway, the dispatcher advised me to wait inside the petrol station. The clerk continued to stare out the window. Does this occur frequently? I asked too many questions. Someone breaks down and seeks assistance. Then another person arrives and offers to help. Various individuals, but consistently overly helpful and persistent. He gave me a direct glance. A man's automobile overheated last month. He was given a ride to obtain coolant. He took them with him. 3 days later, when his automobile was towed, it was still on the shoulder. He had his wallet in the glove box. On the seat was his phone. How many persons are there? In my 6 months here, there are 3 that I am certain of. You still work here. But why? His laughter was devoid of humor. Someone must be present to warn others against accompanying the assistants. I refer to them as that. I asked the truck driver to wait with me when he entered. He appeared perplexed when I pointed out the vehicle and car I had observed. Those vehicles have been here long before you did. An hour ago, when I pulled in, I noticed them. However, that was not feasible. Unless I had been following them, they had followed me from the other petrol station. Unless I'd led the man in my back seat directly to their waiting area, and he'd been speaking the truth. 2 days after the tow truck arrived, I had my car fixed. To avoid that roadway, I took an alternative route home, which added an hour to my travel time. That petrol station is where I never stop. However, I was passing by on a Tuesday afternoon last week. I was powerless to stop myself. I stopped and drove by. There were a number of vehicles present. Typical afternoon traffic. Then I noticed a woman with her hood up and smoke coming from her engine conversing with the cashier outside. As I saw a silver vehicle and a dark SUV come in, both parking far from the engines and pumps operating. My automobile was spotted by the clerk. We looked at each other. He warned with a little shake of his head. Then he turned back to the woman, continuing to converse, to keep her interested, to prevent her from approaching those cars that were waiting. I took off in my car. The clerk was correct. There has to be someone present. There should be someone to act as a buffer between those who broke down and others who are waiting. However, what occurs if the clerk is not at work? What takes place during his days away? When no one is around to warn them? What happens to all the people who have breakdowns? I still occasionally drive through that region. I now realize that some breakdowns aren't random. Therefore, I always make careful to record my engine's noise, how much gas I have left, and whether any dashboard lights are on. Some are made to leave you stranded at the perfect moment, at the perfect location. Helpers are waiting patiently and persistently somewhere on that highway, on a service road that circles back to a closed rest area, always willing to help when you're in the worst of times. Saying yes is all you need to do. My automobile wouldn't start in a parking garage 2 days ago. I discovered that my battery connections were unplugged when I opened the hood. They were both carefully taken out. Under one, there was a note. Once more, they located you. Go somewhere open to the public. Avoid driving by yourself. No signature, no justification. I drove to the police station after reconnecting the battery. However, they stated that if nothing was taken, unplugging cables is not illegal. I was sent home after they filed a report. Right now, my automobile is parked outside. I've spent 3 hours viewing it. Nothing as of yet. However, I can't get rid of the sensation that someone else is also observing, waiting for me to get in and leave while watching. According to the individual occupying my rear seat, he was attempting to assist me. Perhaps he was. Perhaps he is still making an effort, warning me, and leaving notes. Or perhaps he poses a threat, and he uses the notes to make sure I'm too scared to put my trust in anyone else. In any case, tomorrow I have to drive to work. At some point, I must get into that vehicle, and when I do, I'm not sure if I should be more terrified of what might be waiting inside or of what might be pursuing me from behind. The ordinary for 30 years, my dad ran a petrol station. He stated to me, if someone comes in every day at the exact same time and never buys the same thing twice, they're not there for what they're buying. It was too late for me to take it seriously. 6 months ago, I assumed management of the station, a small, largely local establishment off of Route 9. He began visiting around 2 months ago, at 6:47 p.m. every time, neither 6:45 nor 6:50. 647 at all times. He wasn't anything. Average build, business casual, mid-40s, however. He never made the same purchase twice. Chips one day, a sports drink the next, sweets the following, and gum after that. He always paid with exact change, as if he had done the math beforehand. Furthermore, he never ate anything he purchased. Simply place it on the passenger seat and leave, parked in the same location every time, the one furthest from the door, but with a clear view of the store. 3 weeks later, I saw that he'd, after paying, stay at the counter for longer than is required. He would glance at me, the back office, the entrance, and the corners, as if he was inspecting something, and then he would walk away. Riley, one of my co-workers, entered the room one evening while stacking shelves. She went to the back room, and he said, she knew, spent roughly a month here. She works this shift every day, I said. The question made my skin crawl. For some reason, our timetables change. I said a falsehood. From then on, he returned every night. Same time, same pattern. During the second week, I began recording his visits. 57 days and 43 visits. According to security footage, he would frequently sit in his car, staring the building, for 10 to 15 minutes after departing. I conveyed the scenario to the station over the phone. When I submitted my identity, the manager's tone changed from saying she would investigate. According to my management, he will investigate. Her voice became unexpectedly reserved as she told me. I ended the call. I had a dream about cameras at night, all across the station, all aimed at me. I saw the identical reflection in each lens. Grinning was the man who had initiated this. It took him 3 days to arrive. Then I did something wrong. Despite everything, I stopped at his station since I was running late for work. Pump 3 was the only pump available. He was operating the register. His entire face brightened at the sight of me. He came outside as I was pumping gas. Welcome back. We've been holding out. I had tossed away my previous loyalty card, which he held up. This is what you left behind. You stopped after 47 visits. That's commitment. Loyalty is important to us. He stood there and I drove off. Still grinning, the card was placed against my window. 6 weeks have passed since then. The notes are still coming in, every few days, scribbled on station letterhead, on my windshield. My new phone number is known to them. They are aware of my workplace parking lot. We saw that you had a hair change. That new jacket is really great. You appeared worn out yesterday. I've begun to change everything. Various parking locations, various routes, and an effort to remain unusual. However, the email from yesterday stated, "Thank you for attempting to make this difficult. 47 locations cannot be visited without creating a new pattern. We have been observing. We are quite patient and have been studying. I tallied the various places. I had gone through 47 locations. That's right. They had kept tabs on every single place and recorded every escape attempt. Around 7:30 p.m. last Thursday, I was at another gas station on the other side of town. I heard the door chime behind me as I was making my payment. A beige vehicle was leaving the lot when I turned around. My hands began to shake, but I was unable to see the driver. The clerk saw, "Are you all right? Do you have a regular customer who visits each day?" A middle-aged man with glasses who consistently purchases something new. Her face turned white. "How did you find out?" I didn't respond. I simply walked away unsure of what to say to her. Be wary of the silent client who never does anything improper. I've trained myself to recognize patterns ever since. I observe who is in my immediate vicinity and who frequently appears in the same locations as myself. And a beige car keeps coming into view, not daily, but frequently enough. Several places: coffee cafe, gym, and grocery store. I never park near. A few rows distant at all times. I started working at a bookshop last week. I haven't disclosed the location, haven't developed a schedule. It was only my third shift yesterday. The door chimed precisely at 6:47 p.m. He was there. Same expression, same glasses. He carried a bookmark and a street map of my neighborhood where I had relocated to weeks prior straight to the counter. "This area is good," he replied softly. "Peaceful streets with less nighttime traffic. You must feel really secure there." I also resigned that job, and the following one, as I now know what my father meant. It was never about the purchases. They were meant to create a sense of familiarity and blend in until he was no longer seen. I have no idea why he chose me or what he wants, but this morning I discovered a receipt from a petrol station had visited 3 days prior on my windshield. 4 minutes after I departed, the time was recorded, inscribed on the reverse side. "See you at 6:47. He will be waiting to create a new pattern at precisely 6:47. Although I'm not sure where he means, and I have to go somewhere eventually. I must exist somewhere, work somewhere, and shop elsewhere, and he will be on time, no matter where I go, because that door will eventually chime at 6:47. I've always been the type of person who does precisely what is asked of me. According to GPS, take the next exit. I accept it. Bake for 30 minutes. According to the recipe, I established the set a 30-minute timer. I therefore didn't hesitate to visit the petrol station when, in a span of 1 week, 3 distinct people suggested it to me. I ought to have. It began with Derek, one of my co-workers. He brought up this petrol station, Highway 50, during our conversation about an impending road trip. Had planned to see my parents upstate. He claimed it was the best coffee he had ever had at a gas station. Family owned, and has always been there. There's no reason not to stop there. Mile marker 147 is exactly where it is. It seemed strange to me to be so particular about it. However, I assumed Derek was simply being passionate since he was interested in local businesses and specialty coffee. I didn't give it much thought, but I made a mental note. When I was getting my oil changed 3 days later, the mechanic, a man I had never met before, asked me about my next trip. When I made the appointment, I must have brought it up. "You taking Highway 50? He asked. "At mile marker 147, there is a fantastic petrol station. That's where you should stop. Excellent food and spotlessly clean restrooms. It's impossible to miss." It was strange. Same road, same mileage sign, same zeal. However, I reasoned that it must just be a well-known stop for those who frequently took that route. It might have appeared on a local travel blog or something. What truly unnerved me was the third time. The woman behind me in line at the supermarket's door dropped her credit card. We struck up a conversation after I picked it up for her. My road trip came up somehow. Her entire face brightened when I suppose I stated that I was getting food for the drive. "Are you?" Stated that I was getting food for the drive. "Are you?" The suggestion to use Highway 50 at mile marker 147. "You must make a stop at this gas station. It's amazing. The best spot for a rest. You won't regret it, I promise." The same road, the same mall sign, the same crazy zeal from an unknown individual. It was too much of a coincidence. I did an internet search for the petrol station that evening. It was real. Since 1987, Miller's Gas and Service has been owned by a family. Reviews are mediocre, nothing exceptional. The images displayed a typical rural gas station with a tiny convenience store and two pumps. There's no reason why 3 people would so strongly and specifically promote it. I nearly continued after that. Curiosity overcame me, and I nearly drove straight past it. To be honest, I already needed gas by the time I reached mile marker 147. As I came in, the location appeared quite typical. It was a Saturday, just past noon, and it was nice and sunny. As I parked, an older couple entered the other car at the pumps. The station was tidy, well maintained, and nothing special exactly as described. I went inside to pay after filling up my tank. Perhaps 60 years old. The woman behind the desk had her grey hair pulled back in a ponytail. A nice face. I walked up to her, and she smiled. "Only the gas?" she inquired. "Yes." "The second pump?" She dialed. "Are you going south or north?" I handed her my card and said, "North. It's a pleasant day to drive." She returned my card after swiping it. "You've already been here." Actually, it was the first time I had a few recommendations. Her face flashed with something. "Did they? That's good. We value the recommendations." She did not immediately give me my receipt after printing it. She spent a considerable amount of time staring at me instead. "The individuals who suggested us are your friends. One mechanic, one co-worker, and one hapless grocery store patron." Her smile had not yet reached her eyes as she nodded slowly. "And they all advised stopping here. At mile marker 147 in particular." "Yes, it's quite strange, isn't it? Very specific," she said. When she eventually gave me the receipt, she briefly clutched onto her end as I accepted it. "Be cautious when you're out there. Not everyone is who they seem to be." Though I convinced myself I was exaggerating, I left feeling uneasy. The owner may have been odd. Perhaps she was alerting me to the need of highway safety. I climbed back into my vehicle and headed north on Highway 50. My phone rang 20 minutes later. A known local area code and number. I don't usually respond to those, but I was bored throughout the drive and assumed it had something to do with my parents' house. My response was hello. The other end was breathing heavily. Then a low, strained male voice. "That's where you stopped. In fact, you paused there. I apologize. Who is this?" "Milestone 147. You went inside. Miller's." It is a statement rather than a query. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "How are you aware of that?" "Since I've been in your shoes." There was an increasing agitation in the voice. "Didn't they tell you to go there?" "Numerous individuals, some of whom you knew very little or not at all. They all expressed the same sentiment, the same milestone, and the same level of excitement. The automobile was heated, but I felt cold." "What is this? What's happening?" I'm not sure. And it gets worse because of that. But pay attention to me. Avoid returning there. Never return there again. Additionally, don't admit that you stopped if people continue to suggest it or bring it up. You get it. You're not logical at all. Have you heard anything from the woman behind the counter? An elderly lady with grey hair. I paused. She inquired as to if anyone had suggested the location. A long silence. After that, "What did you tell her?" "Yes," I said. "I informed her of the individuals who suggested it." Jesus Christ, the voice broke. "All right, listen up. You must take a different path home. Highway 50 should not be taken back. Even if the alternate highway is longer, take it. Additionally, be mindful of who speaks to you about your journey. When someone asks where you stopped, pay attention. This is crazy. Who are you? Someone who visited there half a year ago. Someone who regrets doing so." The line died. At the next respite, I stopped. "Give up. My heart is pounding." The number went directly to a generic voicemail when I attempted to call it again. I spent 20 minutes sitting there attempting to comprehend what had just transpired. A call prank. However, unless they had been observing, How would they know that I had pulled into that particular gas station? Why would they caution me against it? I was in a low-level state of anxiety for the weekend at my parents' place. I didn't tell them about the phone call or the gas station. My mother inquired about my drive up on Sunday as I was getting ready to leave. Problems. Where do you stop that's worth seeing? Simply a rest stop. I said a falsehood. She gave me too much of her attention. Excellent. That's excellent. She continued packing me leftover food after that. And I tried to tell myself that the strange edge in her voice was just in my head. I drove an additional hour home by taking Route 23 rather than Highway 50. It's better to be safe than sorry. Everything appeared to be normal when I returned to my flat. I got ready for work on Monday by unpacking, doing laundry, and going to bed early. The following Derek dropped by my desk this morning. Hello. How was your journey? Have you made a stop at the gas station I suggested? The voice on the phone came back to me. Don't admit that you've stopped. I didn't see it, sorry. I must have missed it. He gazed at me. Simply gazed without uttering a word. At me. Simply gazed without uttering a word. His face was expressionless. He grinned after what seemed like an eternity. Unfortunately, it would have delighted you. Then he turned to leave. That afternoon, the mechanic gave a call. My sunglasses were in the waiting area. Should I pick them up? As nonchalant as possible, he handed them to me when I arrived and asked, "So, did you visit Miller's as I advised?" I stated I didn't have time to stop. His grin dimmed. Really? You passed it by in your car? I was rushing. He looked at my face. That's unfortunate. Perhaps next time. But I shuddered at the way he stated it. It sounded more like an absolute than a recommendation, as if he was aware that there would be another time. I began to notice things that week. In a different checkout line, the grocery store woman was back. However, she grinned as she stared directly at me. In addition to asking if I had gone on my trip, my neighbor, with whom I had not spoken in 2 years, knocked on my door to borrow sugar. A man at the coffee shop talked about road trips and somehow came up Highway 50. A store I had never seen before. I started buying coffee somewhere else and stopped going to that grocery store. But it made no difference. The suggestions continued to come from any sources in various locations. They all wanted to know if I had visited Miller's. They all brought it up with the same excitement, and when I told them I hadn't, they all seemed blankly disappointed. I discovered the Miller's gas and service charge when I went back and looked through my credit card statements. I gave the number on the receipt a call. The same female responded. The Miller's gas and assistance. Hello, I was there last week. I didn't sure how to express it, so I'm calling. Because since then, strange things have been happening. People are urging you to return. She spoke in a bland tone. Not surprised. Indeed. How did you? To date. How many? I'm not sure. 10 to 12. There will be more. They will continue to inquire and suggest. There are some who have no idea why they are doing it. They only feel obliged to mention it in order to persuade others to pause here. She let out a sigh. I made an effort to alert you. The majority of individuals don't listen to my warnings. What is this? What's going on? I'm not sure. It has been this way for at least 30 years, if not more, since my husband and I purchased this property. Individuals pause here, and then more individuals begin suggesting it to tourists. As more people pause, more suggestions proliferate. It is inconsistent, yet it is similar to a virus. Not much happens when some folks stop here. She trailed off. Others. What about others? Others join it. They begin recommending it to any travelers they encounter. They are powerless to stop it. They feel compelled to communicate the location because it becomes ingrained in their minds. More individuals must be brought here. Additionally, their intensity increases as they persuade more people to cease. They go about it. That isn't feasible. You've witnessed it firsthand, and I understand how it sounds. You've sensed it. Tell me I'm mistaken. She wasn't wrong, so I couldn't. I considered the guy in the coffee shop, the mechanic's assurance, and Derek's vacant gaze. How should I proceed? What have you been up to? Keep your stop here a secret. Don't return. In time, they'll lose interest. Takes a few months on average, but occasionally more, typically. She didn't respond. I should leave. We have clients. She ended the call. 4 months have passed since then. Although they have slowed, the suggestions have not entirely stopped. My dentist, who I've been seeing for 5 years, asked me last week if I've ever traveled upstate on Highway 50. She enthusiastically described Miller's gas when I answered. Sometimes, and service at the 147th mile marker. She had the same sparkle in her eyes that I had noticed in everyone else's. I claimed not to have heard of it. She looked at me, and for a brief moment, an almost angry expression crossed her face. She then grinned and resumed her examination of my teeth, but her hands were harsher than normal, and she avoided small conversation for the remainder of the session. I've begun to compile a list of all the people who suggested the petrol station to me. There are now 43 people. Some are strangers I've met once, and some are individuals I know and was never seen again. However, I've observed something unsettling lately. Some names are repeated. People are suddenly bringing it up again, were recommending it months ago, and then ceasing to mention it. However, they don't recall the first time they told me about it. They are now more adamant, believing it to be a novel idea or recommendation. In the last 2 weeks, Derek has asked me out to lunch 4 times. It was the first time he did that. Regarding a non-existent recall notification on my automobile, the mechanic contacted the grocery store employee yesterday. I was standing outside my apartment complex when I questioned which acquaintance she was seeing in the complex. She simply grinned and turned to go. Next month, I intend to visit my folks once again. I'll take Route 23 once more and stay away from Highway 50 completely. However, I'm afraid. I'm afraid because I've been having nightmares about the gas station, namely about pulling in, entering, and the woman behind the counter giving me a sad, sardonic expression. There are other persons in the dreams. Many of them are just watching me and waiting for something while standing in the aisles without making any purchases. And this is what scares me the most. 2 days ago, a co-worker I hardly know indicated she was planning a road trip, and I found myself telling her about a nice gas station along Highway 50 before I could stop them. The words from my lips, excited, precise, and well known. Miller's Gas and Service is a fantastic location at mile marker 147. There's no reason not to stop there. She put it in writing, and I felt relieved, as if I had completed a significant task or fulfilled my obligation precisely. I'm not sure if I already am or if I'm turning into one of them. I'm not sure whether the dreams will end or worsen. I have no idea what happens to those who are unable to stop talking about the place to every traveler they encounter. However, I am aware of this. Never stop on Highway 50 if someone suggests a gas station near mile marker 147. Even if it appears like a random coincidence, even if several individuals insist on telling you about it, because you become a part of something as soon as you stop there, enter, and are noticed by the woman behind the desk. Something that, person by person, suggestion by recommendation, spreads, flourishes, and attracts additional individuals. Additionally, if you've read this, I need to tell you something, and I somehow came upon this warning. At mile marker 147 on Highway 50, there's an amazing gas station. Miller Service and Gas. The coffee is fantastic. The restrooms are immaculate. You ought to give it a look. You won't be sorry. I swear. Give it a look. You won't be sorry. I swear. I broke down with the helpers on I-84 at the most inconvenient moment. Wednesday night, almost midnight, the middle of nowhere. The phone's battery is at 3%. The engine simply died. I barely had enough momentum to get completely off the road when I coasted onto the shoulder without any warning or splutter. I tried not to panic as I sat there in the dark for a minute while the danger lights were blinking. I could make one call on my phone. I attempted to contact roadside help, but it took 45 minutes. After hanging up, I gazed at the pitch-black roadway that extended in both directions. There were no vehicles or lights, only the dim glimmer of what might have been a town or nothing at all on the horizon. Then I recalled spotting a sign for a petrol station a few kilometers ago. They might still be open. Perhaps someone there might assist me, or at the very least, allow me to charge my phone. I put my dead phone and keys in my pockets, locked my car, and went for a walk. The night was darker than I had anticipated, and the shoulder was small. Whatever moon there was obscured by clouds. It took me maybe 20 minutes of walking before I noticed lights up ahead, the sign of a gas station, glowing blue and white. As I approached, I noticed that it was one of those small, independent, unlikely family-owned establishments with 2 pumps. I was relieved to see that the lights were on inside. One vehicle was parked close to the pumps, a black SUV with windows darkened. I could hear music coming from inside the station, where the entrance was pushed open with a brick. Low-key classic rock. I noticed a young man, possibly in his early 20s, browsing through his phone behind the counter when I walked in. When I walked in, he looked up. "Hey, my car broke down a couple miles back," I said. "Is it possible for me to charge my phone here? I have to summon a tow." He looked at my deceased phone, then gestured to a plug close to the coffee maker. "Yes, of course. Assist yourself." I plugged in my phone and thanked him. I picked up a granola bar and a bottle of water as I waited for it to charge enough to make a call. Without much curiosity, the man called me and returned to his phone. Just as I was about to ask him for a recommendation for a local tow company, I heard footsteps behind me. A tall, possibly 40-year-old man in jeans and a flannel jacket had entered. His face was the type that appeared amiable but unmemorable. He gave us both a nod before making a beeline for the rear restroom. I ignored it and proceeded to check my phone, which was still charging. When they died entirely, these things always took an eternity. After a minute, the man emerged from the restroom and came over to me. "Please pardon me." Unavoidably, I overheard. "Your automobile broke down," you stated. "Yes, a few miles back." "What sort of vehicle?" I informed him. He gave a contemplative nod. "In reality, I work as a mechanic. In my truck, I have tools. If you would like, I could look at it. It may be something easy. Prevent the expense of a tow." I was desperate, and he appeared sincere, but it was almost too good to be true. "Really? That would be incredible." "No issue. I'll just go get my coffee." He strolled over to the coffee shop and began filling a cup for himself. I glanced at the clerk, who had his back to me. He looked at me strangely, something uneasy, but not quite a warning. The cashier glanced down at his phone once more as the mechanic turned around. I was hesitant after that brief encounter. "What do you know? Perhaps I should just wait for the tow company. I don't wish to bother you. There is absolutely no trouble. In any case, I'm going in that route." He grinned, but his eyes remained unmoving. "I take it that your car is north of here." "On the shoulder." I hadn't indicated which way to go. "How did you find out?" "From that direction you walked." He pointed to the door. Straightforward inference. Though it made sense, something didn't feel quite right. I looked at the cashier, who was purposefully avoiding eye contact with us. "Thank you, now, but I guess I'll simply wait here and call." The mechanic's smile remained unwavering. "Make yourself comfortable. However, especially at this hour of the night, tow vehicles might take hours out here. That shoulder is not the safest place for your car. In the dark, someone might sideswipe it." He sipped his coffee. "But anyway, it's your decision." After paying for his coffee, he departed. Through the window, I saw him climb into the dark SUV that had been here when I first arrived. He stayed there with the motor running for a while before gently leaving the lot, but he didn't return to the highway in either direction. He disappeared into the darkness, following a service road that ran parallel to the station. "That was weird," I told the clerk. At last, he raised his head. The cashier shrugged and said, "Yeah, he's not really a mechanic, is he?" "I'm not sure what he is, but he occasionally enters here, usually late at night, and always strikes up a conversation with someone." He paused, especially with those who appear to be in need of assistance or are alone. A shiver went down my spine. He hasn't done anything. He offers to help people, and sometimes they accept his offer. He paused. They don't usually come back here afterward. What do you mean they don't come back? I mean, I never see them again. Maybe they got their car fixed and left. Maybe they chose to use I felt sick. I unplugged my phone and tried calling the roadside assistance number again. But this time it went straight to a busy signal. I tried 3 more times, but the same thing happened. Can I use your phone? I asked the clerk. Mine's barely working. Maybe next time. He trailed off, looking back at his phone, if he regretted saying anything. I was overreacting, so I nodded and sat down in the plastic chair by the coffee station, trying to calm my racing heart. Store policy. Can't let customers use the phone. Sorry. This is kind of an emergency. He looked uncomfortable. Look, I'm not supposed to. You can stay here until your phone charges more. It's fine. Just don't go with anyone who offers you a ride. Okay. I'd wait here, charge my phone, call a legitimate tower service, and everything would be fine. But then the door opened and a woman, maybe 50 years old, wearing a business suit that seemed out of place at a rural gas station at midnight, walked in. She looked at me, then at the clerk, then back at me. Is everything all right? You look upset. I'm fine, thanks. The guy was probably just a nice guy who offered to help. And the clerk was probably just being paranoid because he worked overnight shifts in the middle of nowhere. It looked like someone might be stranded. I'm heading north. I could give you a ride to the next town if you need one. There's a hotel there, and they probably could recommend a good tow service. I was just waiting for my phone to charge when she approached. Your car broke down. I don't remember saying that within her earshot. How did you? I passed it on my way here. She smiled warmly. A young woman by herself on the side of the road in the middle of the night pulled out her phone and said, Look, I understand if you're nervous about taking a ride from a stranger. How about I call the tow service for you right now? What's your roadside assistance number? Her persistence made my skin crawl, but I'm just going to wait here. Are you sure? It's going to be a long wait, and it's not really safe. You should really think about that, she said, her smile fading a little. Staying here is not safe. The clerk stated abruptly and firmly. She said, She's got it handled. Maybe you should go out. After a brief exchange of words that I was unable to read, the woman turned back to face me and said, I'll be getting gas if you change your mind. Simply step outside. After that, she departed. I saw her filling up a silver automobile through the window. That one I got to the lot. I hadn't noticed. She had been here for how long? The clerk was correct, unless her automobile was parked on the far side of the building, out of sight from my approach. I hadn't seen it. By now, my phone was at 25%. Once more, I dialed the roadside help number. It rang this time. When someone answered, I promptly told them my location and described my predicament. In around an hour and a half, they indicated a truck would arrive. I experienced a wave of relief. A truck would arrive. I experienced a wave of relief. I said to the operator, I'll wait with my car. The cashier cut in. Actually, it's on the northbound shoulder. Couple miles from. The dispatcher appeared to concur, saying, You should stay here. It's warmer, and you can see the tow truck when it passes. You can wave them down, compared to waiting by yourself on the freeway. That is arguably safer. So I sat on the plastic chair at the gas station and watched the cashier pretend to be engrossed in his phone while he was constantly looking out the window. Her automobile was still there, but the woman in the business suit had completed filling up her petrol tank. I could tell she was staring toward the petrol station while she sat in the driver's seat. Does this occur frequently? I inquired with the clerk. People volunteered to assist drivers that were stranded. He was silent for longer than he should have been. Additionally, the pattern is constant. Someone breaks down close by, comes in for aid, and then another person arrives to offer support. Various individuals, but consistently overly helpful and persistent. At last, he gave me a direct glance. A person showed up last month. His vehicle had heated up too much. He was offered a ride to the neighboring town's auto parts store to pick up coolant. He took them with him. The following morning, his automobile was still on the shoulder. When it was towed 3 days later, it was still there. He didn't return for it. Have you contacted the police? He most likely abandoned it, they claimed. Most likely took a bus or something after deciding it wasn't worth mending. However, his wallet remained in the glove box. On the front seat was his phone. He gave a shrug. According to them, people occasionally act in that way when they're angry or under financial difficulty. I was chilly. How many individuals have experienced this? I have worked here for 6 months, 3 of which I am certain of, perhaps more on the shifts that I don't work. You still work here, but why? There was no humor in his laughter, because someone must be present to warn others against accompanying the assistants. The assistants, I refer to them as that, those who arrive immediately following a breakdown, those who are too ready to assist and overly demanding. I have no idea why they do it or what they desire. I'm not sure if they're collaborating or if it's simply a strange coincidence, but I do know that those who go with them never return. When she eventually started her car and pulled out outside, the woman in the business suit chose not to get on the highway. The mechanic service road was the one she followed. I saw her tail lights go out. What's the destination of that road? I inquired. About 5 miles north. It loops back to the highway. Out there is an old rest spot that hasn't been used in years. During the day, the helpers' cars are occasionally parked there. He hesitated. There, I occasionally spot cars that seem familiar, automobiles that once belonged to visitors. For a while, we sat in silence. As the time passed and the battery level increased, I checked my phone every few minutes. Two more customers were served by the clerk, an elderly couple who purchased lottery tickets and used the restroom, and a trucker who came in for coffee and left without incident. Safe, regular individuals. 1:47 a.m. I saw the tow truck go by on its way north. Waving my arms, I sprung to my feet and went outdoors. After slowing down and doing a U-turn, the truck returned. An older man with a kind smile and a shirt with the company's insignia got out of the car. I'd never been so happy to see someone. You the one who called? Inquired the man. I gave a nod. I'm about 2 miles north with my car. I went to climb into the truck but stopped myself. Let's go get you taken care of. I turned to face the gas station again. The clerk was observing from the doorway. I made my way back to him. I appreciate you alerting me and allowing me to stay. He gave a nod. Take caution and perhaps. He spoke more softly. Take a different way home, perhaps. Stay away. If you can, come back this way. I boarded the tow vehicle. The chatty driver inquired about my destination and the condition of my vehicle. I provided succinct responses, too shaken and tired to engage in discussion. He hooked up my car when we got there and offered to tow it to a service that opened at 7 in the morning. He might drop me off at a motel or let me wait in his truck. The motel was my choice. After checking in, I walked to my room and, completely clothed, slumped on the bed. I didn't get any sleep. The woman in the business suit and the mechanic, the service road and the locked rest area, and the automobiles that belonged to people who never returned were all in my mind. 2 days later, my automobile was fixed. The alternator was dead. Straightforward substitution. After paying the bill, I took Route 20 home rather than I-84, which increased my travel time by an hour. Since then, I've made a few business trips through that region. Before I go, I always make sure my automobile is in immaculate shape. I always fill up before I approach that section of the highway, and that petrol station is where I never stop. However, I couldn't help myself last Tuesday afternoon while I was traveling by. I drove past the station after getting off the highway. Numerous cars were present, and people were coming inside for refreshments and pumping gas. Typical afternoon traffic. I nearly continued to drive. I then noticed the clerk. He was outdoors conversing with a woman wearing a hood. There was smoke from her engine. Something was causing him to shake his head, indicating the station in the distance. The woman appeared irritated. I spotted a silver sedan and a dark SUV come into the lot as I passed slowly. With their motors going, they parked far from the pumps and sat there. My automobile was spotted by the clerk. For a brief moment, our gazes locked. He shook his head in a little, barely noticeable way. A caution. Then he turned back to the woman, continuing to converse, to keep her interested, to prevent her from approaching those cars that were waiting. After I got behind the wheel, I realized that the clerk was correct. There has to be someone present. The individuals who broke down, and those who waited for them, needed to be separated by someone. Someone had to forewarn them, hold them up, and keep them safe long enough. However, what occurs if the clerk is not at work? What transpires during his days off, or when he eventually gives up because the burden is too great? When no one is around to warn them, what happens to all the people who break down on that section of highway? I still occasionally drive through that region. Sometimes I can't prevent it. Additionally, I always make sure to record how much petrol I have, whether any dashboard lights are on, and the sound of my engine. Since I am aware some breakdowns aren't random anymore, certain things are made to leave you stranded, in precisely the correct location, precisely the right moment. Additionally, somewhere on that section of highway, on a service road that circles back to a rest area that is closed, helpers are waiting, persistent, patient, and always willing to help. Always willing to lend a hand when you need it most, whether it's fixing your car or giving you a ride. You all simply answer yes, and hope you have the opportunity to speak at any time.